Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Got a Problem with Your Knee? Ask Dr. P. My name is Luciano Vigilati. I am a VFit specialist here at Victory in Motion, the home of knee repair, not knee replacement. We are so excited to welcome you to our weekly show. We have a ton of questions that were submitted to our school group, Got a Problem with Your Knee? Ask Dr. P, our Facebook group, Knee Repair, Not Knee Replacement, and our social media accounts at Victory in Motion 1. First thing is first, who is Dr. P? Dr. P is a board certified orthopedic physician, a sports medicine specialist, and a regenerative specialist. He is the founder and CEO of Victory in Motion and the creator of the trademarked Knee Repair Not Knee Replacement program. Victory in Motion's mission is to make the world knee replacement free by 2043. Yes, you heard that right. Knee replacement free by 2043. Dr. P has over 25 years in orthopedics and regenerative medicine, so he brings a wealth of knowledge every week to the show to be able to answer your burning questions. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. P.
Hey, Luigi. Hey, everybody
What's
out there.
what's up? What's up? So today is kind of has a theme to the questions today. And they're mostly based around gardening and hiking. So common activities that our population sees and does. So let's get right into it, and we'll start with the first question, and that is, can gardening make arthritis worse?
Okay, so the question is, can gardening make arthritis worse? Um, and I would say that in general, no. If you look in the blue zones around the world, people who do a lot of gardening and outdoor activities, they tend to live longer. They tend to have less arthritis, less joint problems. They tend to have they're less overweight, so they're putting less stress on their joints, and they're doing functional activities to help strengthen the muscles around their knees, so that that helps take the pressure off. So in general, I would say gardening doesn't make arthritis worse. Having said that, if you have arthritis in your gardening, it may aggravate your knee if you do, kind of do things the wrong way. And frankly, I'm a huge gardener, and I actually tore my meniscus gardening one time. So you can injure your knee gardening. And in general, I'd say gardening doesn't make arthritis worse, but it could if something went wrong, or you did something the wrong way, or twisted the wrong way, or knelt or squatted the wrong way.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, you did treat your meniscus tear, correct?
Yeah, it was back in 2006. So I was just kneeling in the garden, squatting and kneeling, and weeding, and the kids were supposed to be doing that, but they weren't, and so I had to do the weeding, and I didn't feel an actual pop or snap right then and there, but I had pain immediately along the inner side of my knee. It swelled up, starting to click a little bit. And then literally like a day or two later, I was actually in a family golf tournament, and I was squatting down to read a putt on the first hole, and I literally felt the pop, and then my knee started locking up, and it was a flap tear that was flapping back and forth. So I think I at least, partially tore it gardening initially.
Right, right. And now how do you feel? Are you back gardening?
Yeah, actually, I did have to have surgery on it because it was unstable and it did flop back and forth. So that answers your first question. But yeah, I've run like 3 marathons since then, and I have a huge garden right now this time of year. So you can get back doing all the things that you want to do. And luckily, it was a pretty small tear and just a little piece that had to be trimmed out.
For sure. So going from you were saying that, kneeling is, what you feel like began it was the initial thing when you were gardening. Do you believe that it's better to kneel or squat when gardening?
Yeah, so I mean, invariably you have to kneel and squat if you're going to really be, gardening. I mean, there's all kinds of tools to plant things and do things standing up as best as you can, but I mean, in general, you got to get down and dirty. And so, yeah, there's a lot of kneeling and squatting. I don't know if it was the kneeling or the squatting or both that caused it, but we know that squatting, especially, below 90 degrees, if you're twisting or turning, it does put a lot of stress on your meniscus cartilages. And if you don't have the right mechanics or the right mobility, in your knee and your holdover extremity, then it can lead to problems. There's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with squatting if you do it right and if you have the right mobility and the right uh, uh, mechanics. But a lot of people don't have that. And putting a lot of compressive force and twisting and turning like you do when you kneel and you squat can tear your meniscus. And that's what happened in my case. And we've had other people where that same thing has happened. On the other hand, the exercise that you get and the mental health that you get from gardening, it far outweighs the risks of injuring your knee or injuring something else. But you can injure yourself even gardening, yes.
For sure.
Sure.
And I feel like that comes down to even like, the actual person. If you don't have the range of motion to squat, probably kneeling will be better. But also if you have that pain while you're kneeling, squatting might be the better option. But you can also get some back issues as well if you're not squatting correctly. So there
Absolutely.
are there are some things to think about, and it's not a do one thing does it all for everybody. Everybody is a little
Agreed.
bit different. So
Yeah, I agree. Because kneeling probably causes technically a little bit less stress on the knee itself, the actual joint itself and the meniscus cartilage. But right under the surface of the skin, there's bursa, which is a little thin fluid-filled sac that lubricates the skin as it goes across the bony part of your knee, and that can swell up and be very painful. It's called prepatellar bursitis or infrapatellar bursitis, or quote unquote water on the knee. And that can be very painful. So then kneeling wouldn't be better, squatting would be better. Whereas, like you said, if you don't have good range of motion, squatting, you're not going to be able to squat. And squatting probably in general puts a little more stress on the interior structures of the knee. So it's six one, half a dozen another. But if it came down to just an answer, kneeling probably is a little less stressful to the knee than squatting.
for sure. The next one is what stretches help loosen up stiff knees before or after gardening?
I'm going to throw that to you a little bit in a second here as well, because obviously you're a total body BFit specialist, you're a physical therapy assistant, and you're a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So you are absolutely and the expert on this. But I would say that I wouldn't go in cold and just start doing ballistic static stretches, meaning, you get out of bed in the morning, you go in the garden, and you start, trying bouncing up and down to touch your toes. We know that's called a ballistic stretch, and that's probably more harm than good. But maybe going for a little walk ahead of time, breaking out in a little bit of a sweat so your body's warmed up, and then doing the stretches is probably a better way. But even just either riding a bike or walking around and getting your muscles, the blood flowing is going to be better than just starting cold. But as far as specific stretches, I mean, I have my own ideas on that, but I'm going to defer to you. What do you think are the best exercises for gardening? Because you're going to bet you're going to. I mean, one of them is right. You're going to be flexed over and flexing your back. Extension exercises for the back, even while you're gardening, periodically are very important. My father-in-law is 96. You guys have worked with him. He's constantly bent over in the garden. He's had some knee pain. His knee's fine, actually. There's nothing wrong with his knee. It's his back that's causing the knee pain. And every time you guys get him to do the extension exercises, his knee pain goes away. So now in the garden, after he's been bent over for 10, 15 minutes, he'll do his extension exercises and he'll be fine. So I'm going to throw that to you for the rest, but that's one practical example I see all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Everything you said is where my head was going as well. I believe getting that warm up, whether it's a walk or on the bike, to get the blood flowing, get the muscles activated, get blood flow to those muscles, is important before you start doing any kind of stretching. And the stretching should be more of a dynamic warm up as much as you can, safely as you can, mimicking as much as you can the action that you're going to be doing. So, go on a walk, go on a bike ride for around 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, get a little sweat in, and then specific exercises. The main ones for the knee is really, and these are a little bit more of a static hold, but these are beneficial for creating space in that joint and getting, the good, healthy synovial joint fluid into the area as well as blood flow. well, and I can overlay um, videos of these exercises on social media. So if you stay tuned on social media, you can see examples of these exercises. We're still trying to get better at overlaying in the moment on these, but we'll get there at some point.
Live,
But
yeah. We need one more person, one more editor who can do that live, but
right,
we'll get there.
we'll get
But
there.
I agree with you. When you split these up into videos on social media, you do a great job of putting the B-roll, so to speak. But another thing I wanted to add too, I have a lot of patients who love to garden, but also love to do yoga. I'm telling you, yoga I think is a great exercise for people who like to garden. So that's another thought that I had that came to mind. I have a lot of patients who love to do both. And there's obviously huge mental benefits from both as well, let alone
Mhm.
physical.
Right, and that goes into that yoga pose, the cobra. That's good. Like that's the main one that people should be doing, especially before gardening. How you were talking about flexing down at your waist. We flex around over 3,000 times a day flexing forward, and we're in the hundreds of flexing backwards, extending
Exactly.
backwards. So getting those prone press ups or cobra pose to get that extension in the back, like you were saying before, in the middle and at the end of doing your gardening, will make a huge difference in terms
Huge.
of that comfortability and especially with the knees because as we see every day here, a lot of times the knee pain is stemming from the back. So just doing those cobra poses, those prone press ups, getting to that end range, can definitely help your symptoms while you're, gardening. And there's actually times that it abolishes your symptoms when you're gardening. So there are times for that. And then there are also alternatives if you're not able to get on your stomach or upper body strength in order to press up, just getting at a counter and extending over that counter, hinging over that counter, will help as well. But I do think that stretching is it's the static holds that you were saying is a little more overrated than people believe. I believe getting the muscles activated and getting more like controlled movement is really what's going to get your muscles and joints ready to garden. The next thing that we have on here is can knee pads help my knee pain when gardening?
Well, I think can knee pads help the knee pain when gardening? The answer is yes. It can prevent knee pain in the first place. So having something soft to kneel on, I think is helpful. It lessens that risk of the prepatellar or the infrapatellar bursitis or the quote unquote water on the knee. Um, and again, I'll use my 96-year-old father-in-law as a great example. He has a chair. It's kind of like a stool, and you can sit on it, you can kneel on it. It's padded. You can flip it over so it's lower, and you can flip it the other way so you can sit. So he can do both. But you don't always need actual knee pads because having a knee pad on your knee, it kind of gets warm when you're gardening and you're sweaty and whatever. So they make foam square or rectangular pads that it has a handle on it. You carry it around and you put it down on the ground, you kneel on it. I found that works better than having knee pads on. I just don't like kneeling down with sweaty knee pads on. And most people, after a while, the knee pads bother them. But something soft to kneel on absolutely can help.
Definitely, definitely. Especially now it's going to be close to 90 today. Those knee pads would be not comfortable.
Yeah,
But
for sure. For sure.
next
Not
thing
to
we
mention,
have
I
is
mean, the ground gets hot too. Or if you have like I have a lot of that black plastic like the organic farmers use and stuff like that, so to keep the weeds out, and that way I don't have to spray for weeds or anything like that. But that stuff gets hot, and to kneel on that, it gets hot. It can burn your knees. So having
yep,
something to kneel on is helpful.
for sure. Next thing we have is can a knee brace help my pain when gardening?
Knee braces, there's so many different knee braces, as you know, and so can a knee brace help you when you're gardening? I guess it depends what the problem is. If you have a truly unstable knee, like you have a torn anterior cruciate ligament, ACL, or a torn MCL, or some ligament that's actually torn, and you have true instability, then I think a brace can technically help. Now, there's a difference. A lot of people call braces, sometimes they're just a knee sleeve And when the weather's cold, they make the knees feel better because it's been cold lately, right? And rainy. And so sometimes wearing something like that for someone who has arthritis, it keeps that knee warm and they feel better and it gives them a little more what we call proprioception or position sense. And some people like that. Some people don't like it because when you kneel and squat, it crumples up in the back of the knee and it bothers them. Or if it's hot, then wearing something like that when it's warm, you get sweaty, you get you can get heat rash, all kinds of things like that. So it depends on the person, but if you don't have actual instability, then a brace probably isn't necessarily going to quote unquote help that much. And frankly, I garden. I know a lot of gardeners, and a lot of people complain about wearing a brace when they're gardening because it's just kind of bulky and kneeling and squatting and trying to kneel on it and all those things. It ends up a lot of times people don't like it. So the most common thing I see people wear is actually like a knee sleeve. Sometimes I see people wear that or a knee pad, like we talked about earlier. Those are the two most common things I see people use. But in general, when you're gardening, a lot of people hate wearing something on their knees because you're squatting and kneeling and twisting, and the thing bunches up and it gets sweaty, and it's usually not all that helpful.
For sure. For sure. The next question I want to ask you before we move on to hiking is since you're well experienced with gardening and things like that, is there any specific things that you do in order to make gardening easier for you on your knees? Are there any techniques that you use?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to plant seeds, there's commercial tools that you can use. But I mean, a good old fashioned long stick and just making a little hole so you don't have to stick your finger in there and bend over, whatever, and then dropping the seeds in there. Um, there's little grippers you can grip and do things with. So there's plenty of tricks you can do to avoid kneeling. I think if you do have to kneel, I think the knee pad helps. The ground has been relatively soft in the Northeast because it's been so wet and rainy. But later in the summer, when it gets hard, it does pay off to have something to kneel on. I think doing the extension exercises is huge. I've had a herniated disc in my back in the past. And so, yeah, if I'm bent over for a long period of time, that's gonna affect my ability to continue to garden. And so all the things we talked about before, I do every single one of those things. And then, yes, you get a little smarter where you try to plant as many things as you can possibly plant without having to kneel down. But if you're going to plant a plant, that's pretty hard to do without actually getting down on the ground and getting down and dirty. And that's part of the beauty of gardening anyway. Who doesn't, if you don't want to get your hands dirty and wet, then you're probably not really a gardener. So I just love getting my hands in the soil, and people love that, and touching the earth and planting plants themselves. And in that regard, there's no choice but to get down on your knees and dig and plant. So all those other things we just talked about, the stretches, the exercises, the knee pads, the padding, whatever works.
100%. Now we're going to go on to hiking, but we are going to kind of start it off how we ended with gardening. And you were saying how with gardening, um, people usually like sleeves more than braces. There's not as much prolonged walking with gardening as there is with hiking. So there could be more instabilities with the walking. I was wondering, are braces or sleeves better for hiking?
Well, again, it kind of depends. Some people are braces or sleeves better for hiking? That's the question. So, some people like the sleeve to keep their knee a little bit warm, and it makes them feel a little more stable. We know a sleeve's not going to give any true stability to a knee. It's just a sleeve. But some people like the proprioception, the position sense or the feel. Some people like the warmth. Um, any sleeve or brace can restrict range of motion, and we don't want to restrict range of motion because that can lead to secondary problems. So as long as it's not restricting range of motion and someone wants to wear a sleeve to keep their knee warm or makes it feel better when they're hiking, I don't have a problem with it. But as the weather gets warmer, a lot of people don't like the sleeves because they get hot and sweaty and heat rash and all those things. I think you get a tan line too, for that matter, if you're vain. But as far as a brace goes, some people need to use a brace. We have people who have ACL tears, anterior cruciate ligament tears, whose knees are truly unstable and they don't want to have surgery. And then we do recommend an ACL brace because, I mean, the ground is uneven. There's twisting, there's turning, there's going uphill, there's going downhill. Those people do find wearing an ACL brace helps. If somebody has some other instability of their knee, torn ligament, usually chronic, meaning it's been there for a long time and they don't want to have surgery on it, a brace can definitely help. But again, in general, unless someone has true instability, we usually don't recommend a brace. Now, there's one slight caveat to that. There are people who maybe have one side of their knee more worn out than the other. So the most common is to have the inner or the medial side of the knee more worn out. So the leg is bow-legged. And there are braces that unload that medial compartment. So it's almost like a spring-loaded brace that kind of unloads that medial compartment to take the pressure off. And some people will love wearing their unloader brace when they're hiking or walking. It's just they don't like wearing an unloader brace all day, every day, because they are kind of bulky and they're not the most fun to have on your knee all the time. But for hiking, and if you're just going to use it for that purpose, some people who have arthritis in their knee do love their unloader brace. So it just depends on the person and depends on what's going on with their knee. But if they're not truly, truly unstable, then a brace is more kind of not really necessary unless people really, really, just like the feel of it.
Right. Yeah, I notice a lot of people like it more for confidence. They feel more confident with the brace, especially after an injury. For sure.
So the only problem with that is, and you know this very well as well, if there's no instability and they start relying on a brace, then their muscles are going to rely on that brace and they're going to get weaker. So the best brace you can have, I probably should have said this, and I know you 1,000% agree with this. The best brace you can have by far is strong muscles. In the entire lower extremity and your back and your core for that matter, even your upper body when you're hiking. But your muscles are your best shock absorbers. They're your best brace. And so if you don't have true instability, you're way, 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 way better getting in with someone like you, total body fitness person, who's going to strengthen everything, than wearing a brace, like by far. So do not wear a brace if you don't have true instability. Get in to see a really good physical therapist, a really good strength and conditioning specialist, someone who's going to work on your whole body, not just your knee only. That would be my biggest piece of advice.
100%. I agree with everything that you just said there. Especially, yeah. Now I got a follow-up question for that. So wearing a brace, kind of has makes the muscles work less and relies more on the brace instead of the muscles. I want to know if that is the same case for ski poles.
Is a great question. I don't know. So, do ski poles cause people to not use their muscles as much? And that, honestly, I don't know the exact answer to. I would say it's a lot less because the ski poles are more for stability and for people who are a little maybe more afraid of falling and unsteady. But again, ski poles are great, but if you get in with someone like you, a really good physical therapist, physical therapy assistant, strength and conditioning specialist, a total body fitness person, and you work with them, that's going to be infinitely better than ski poles. We try our best to get people off their cane, off their ski poles, off their brace if they don't need it. We want you to get stronger, your body to get stronger. Our bodies have an amazing ability to get stronger. There's been studies that show well into our 80s, people still respond much better to exercises. So ski poles are okay, but we have really good ways of improving people's proprioception and their stability so they don't have that fear of falling. And that comes when you get that confidence, you don't need those ski poles. And the same thing, like you said, people feel more confident when they wear a brace. Well, and we make them more confident by strengthening their muscles, doing certain types of exercises where they're on like a balance plate or a Bosu ball or all kinds of one leg, all kinds of different things that you know about. But that's going to make you way more stable than any poles or any braces. So that's really the thing. The lesson I would say is ski poles. I don't think they necessarily weaken people. I don't know that for sure because I don't know of any studies of that. I'm sure they're out there somewhere. But I know for a fact that strengthening your entire body, working on stability, working on balance will make you way more stable than using ski poles or a brace unless you have true instability in your knee.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. No need, you should not have to rely on anything other than your body, especially to move. So working towards trying to get away from, your canes, your ski poles, your braces, is important for
Um, yeah,
long-term
and
sustainability.
it just makes people so much more confident and it's so much more satisfying to us and to them when they're able to ditch their walker, ditch their crutches, ditch their cane, ditch their ski poles, ditch their brace that they thought they needed that they don't need.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Just an amazing transformation. And we have all kinds of people, and you've done a lot of posts on this. You know, I can think of Pam, for instance, right? Really bad knees, had been falling a lot, loves to walk, loves to be active, and she's pretty much ditched everything. And her fear of falling is gone. And she has terribly arthritic knees, but doesn't want surgery. So we're helping her in many ways that she would have never imagined.
Right. Yeah. And another one was, um, came in and did our program and got back to hiking and rock climbing, things that were her big goals to get back to, and we got her there, which is makes all of us feel so great. And seeing pictures and videos of her doing that just, puts into perspective on what we do every day. So the next one we have is it smart to take ibuprofen before hiking?
So, is it smart to take ibuprofen before hiking? Ibuprofen is an anti-inflammatory, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory NSAID, and you take it by mouth. Obviously, you can buy it over the counter. The brand names are like Motrin, Advil. Aleve is not ibuprofen. Aleve is naproxen, but that's also a very common non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. Tylenol or acetaminophen is not a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. It's just a pain medication, so it doesn't do anything for inflammation. So just to kind of clarify what those things are. But should you take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory before hiking? Some people have to, and so it's not necessarily, I'm not going to give medical advice here because yeah, talk to your own doctor about that, in my mind. And some people ibuprofen will bother their stomach. It can make it a higher risk of ulcers, or it can increase your blood pressure, or it can cause liver or kidney problems if you take it for too long, depending on what medication we're talking about. So in general, we try to have people avoid having to take any medications. That's why strengthening your muscles, doing all the total body fitness, even laser therapy is amazing. No needles, no shots, no side effects, no pills. And it's very, very safe and it decreases inflammation, increases blood flow, stimulates the mitochondria, and helps the swelling and inflammation go down. So I would say we try to have people avoid having to do that. So we have people who come to us and they rely on pills. They're just taking pill after pill after pill. And by the time we get done with them with all those other things, they don't have to take the pills anymore. So first of all, always ask your own doctor because they know you best if you should be taking ibuprofen. And then technically, if you have to, and there's no other, and you've tried everything else and nothing else has worked, which is rare, then yeah, you might want to take it before, as directed by your doctor or on the bottle or your pharmacist. And then those type of medications usually want to take with some food because they can bother your stomach. So you don't want to take ibuprofen on an empty stomach, and usually want to take it an hour or hour and a half before you go out and hike. But in general, we're not big fans of it because we like to get people healed naturally without pills. And so most people we deal with were able to get off those nasty non-steroidal anti-inflammatories with other side effects.
For sure. That's the goal. That's what I come back to. That's what I came back to last time is not relying on anything. Should I have to rely on, pain medication or anti-inflammatories to get through the day? Um, the next one that we have is what types of terrain are hardest on the knees?
What types of terrain are hardest on the knees is the question. And I mean, in general, uneven. terrain, it's a little harder on the knees for sure, and the whole lower extremities. Um, but going downhill is a little harder on I think, on the knees than going uphill. And slippery, if it's slippery conditions, that can be, very dangerous because I mean, you can fall as well. And so I think those are, uneven, uh, downhill greater than uphill, and slippery conditions are probably the most dangerous conditions.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
if
agree.
you're climbing on rock, right, that's harder than climbing on soil, and so that can beat your knees up a little bit, and it can be more slippery. But on the other hand, if you're on gravel or loose soil, that can be dangerous too, right? So
Right.
all that's the kind of cool thing about hiking. There is all different types of terrain, and that's what makes it challenging. But that's also what makes it kind of fun. So there's a little challenge there. There's a little danger. You can do more dangerous hikes if you want, but we get, your dopamine level goes up and your adrenaline level goes up, and you feel good until you fall and hurt something. But hopefully that doesn't happen.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Yeah, I agree with that, especially the uneven surface. If that uneven surface is soft too, that can help, that can like force your foot positioning to go into like pronation, even supination, which we know, puts valgus force on the knee, varus force on the knee. So things like that as well. Um, yeah, so many different terrains when you're hiking. So it all depends. What are the three most common injuries from hikers?
So the question is, what are the three most common injuries we see in hikers? And I think honestly, number one is a fall. It does happen, and we see fractured wrists, fractured elbows, fractured collarbones, clavicles, fractured ankles for sure. Less common to see other type of fractures, but we've seen fractured ribs, fractured spines, fractured knees, fractured hips can happen. They usually don't come to us. They go to the emergency room. Some of these things, but you can have any type of fracture or sprain or injury from a fall. So um, fractures are, I should say, falls are one injury. Twisting an ankle sprain, that's probably the number one thing we see by far with hikers. And then going downhill puts a different type of stress on the knee. And so we see a lot of patellar tendonitis, which is also where your kneecap tendon that attaches your kneecap to your shin bone gets inflamed. Itis means inflammation. So patellar tendonitis or quadriceps tendonitis, which is the tendon that attaches your quadriceps muscle to your kneecap, and then also pain under the kneecap itself, chondromalacia patella, which means softening of the cartilage. But there can be various reasons why people get pain in the anterior front part of the knee. But that for hikers, going downhill tends to be more stressful than going uphill. But even going uphill, we can see hamstring strains and things like that. But falling, sprained ankles, tendonitis, tendinosis, overuse injuries.
Yeah, definitely. And that comes, I got a follow up for that is since, number one is probably most likely the ankle sprains. Is it smart to wear an ankle brace when you're hiking, or is that the same as the with the knee? It's just going to make you rely on it too much.
Well, I think if you've had ankle sprains before, there is some evidence that a good lace-up ankle brace will help when you're doing the hiking. So you don't want to wear a brace all the time because the same thing, it can, cause your muscles and your body to rely on the brace. But if you're hiking and you know you're going to be on an unstable surface and you've had ankle sprains before, absolutely a nice lace-up ankle brace. Or they make really good hiking boots that have a lot of support in them. And there's hiking boots that are now a lot more flexible, but also have a lot of support. Because like the more support, the more rigid usually, but then that creates other issues when you're trying to walk up and down and hike. And as far as comfort goes, but now there are, I don't know the exact brands, but there are definitely very good hiking boots that have very good support and also are cushioned, have good arch supports, and also have good mobility and are much more comfortable and more breathable. So those are all things you would look for to support the ankle, but also just the whole foot in and of itself. But if you've never sprained your ankle, I don't think you necessarily need to wear an ankle brace. you could, but I don't think you necessarily need to. But having a very nice supportive boot, so more of a high top, or at least three quarters, but and not a low top type shoe when you're hiking. So I think most people do wear some form of hiking shoe slash boot, and that's really important as opposed to just like wearing Crocs or flip flops or just a regular running sneaker.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We do actually have a question on the shoes later in the show, so we will get to that soon. What does it mean if my knees are swollen after hiking?
So the question is, what does it mean after I hike and my knees are swollen? And what that means is when your knee swells in any area swells, that means it's inflamed, most likely. And it's probably been overused or aggravated. When your eye gets irritated or aggravated or inflamed, it produces more tears, right? Your eyes water. So when your knee gets irritated or aggravated, it's going to produce more fluid and then it swells up. So that's one thing. Arthritis in the knee or a meniscus tear, or someone who has rheumatoid arthritis, or frankly, even Lyme disease. You're hiking, people can get joint aches and pains from Lyme disease, like gout, other rheumatologic conditions, lupus, things like that. But most likely when you're hiking, it's from just overusing the knee, especially if there's already a little bit of arthritis or maybe some degenerative meniscus tearing in there. And then that causes the knee to produce more fluid and to swell. And that's the most common cause of swelling. However, you can also have, we talked about this with the gardening examples, you can have quote unquote water on the knee where you get bursitis over the kneecap or over the kneecap tendon. So prepatellar or infratellar bursitis can cause swelling. We see that, or especially if someone falls and hits their knee right on the front, boom, it can swell up like an egg, huge. Also, you can have a thing called iliotibial band syndrome, IT band syndrome, and that's a band of tissue that runs from your iliac crest, kind of your pelvis, right where your belt goes across, all the way down your thigh on the outer side, right down below your knee. It attaches, and it will rub on the thigh bone back and forth and back and forth. And there's a bursa there, and that can be like a sharp knife-like pain, and you can sometimes notice swelling there. There's also a thing called your pes bursa. The pes bursa is where the hamstrings attach on the inner upper part of the tibia, the shin bone, and when you're going uphill a lot, especially or even downhill, it can occur from the eccentric. But when you're pushing off and going uphill and twisting and turning, and then going downhill and eccentrically loading your muscles as they're lengthening, that where they attach to the bone can get irritated, and there's a bursa there, and that's called your pes bursa, and that can get inflamed and swollen and hurt. So there's a lot of different causes of swelling, and there's more than just what I just mentioned. But if your knee's getting swollen, that means there's probably some type of overuse or injury, and you need to back off a little bit. If it doesn't go away after 2 or 3 days, because I mean, you go out and hike a bunch of hills and you haven't hiked in a while, you're going to be sore for a few days. But if that swelling and pain doesn't go down after 2 or 3 days, that's when you really want to get into, or it gets worse. You want to get in to see somebody, an expert orthopedic surgeon, an expert physical therapist or rehab specialist for sure.
100%. 100%. I think a big thing with that too is, was there an episode? Was there something
Yeah.
that happened
Yeah.
during the hike that caused the swelling? I think that's something to think about as well. Next one, we're there. We're at the shoes. What are the best shoes for hiking?
Um, I'm just answering a text actually, which I shouldn't do, but it's an important one. Sorry about that. We can cut that part out. Sorry, it's live, but sometimes this stuff happens, and I am a doctor, so I do have to answer that. And I am done. So the question is, what about shoes? And we just briefly talked about that for hiking, shoes for hiking. There's a lot of really, really good hiking boots now. I am not an expert at hiking or hiking boots. So I'm going to maybe defer to you if you know a little bit more about that. But I definitely know there's much more breathable, hiking boots. There's much more flexible hiking boots, but there's also flexible ones that breathe, that are supportive, and that's huge. And then obviously a nice tread. Everybody has their own theory on what tread they like better. But there are really good hiking boots, and I would my recommendation again is to wear at least a boot or a three quarters and not a low top or a regular running sneaker or anything less than that, like flip-flops or anything crazy like that. That's just a recipe for disaster.
For sure. Just to dovetail off of that, you know, I think it helps to have a wide toe box so your toes can spread out while you're walking. A lot of time, a lot of steps. You don't want to enclose those toes together. You want them to be able to breathe as well, which is something that you said being breathable. A lot of times the boots, you want to make sure that they're waterproof, especially if you're depending on the hiking that you're going on, getting waterproof ones would be good. And you also want to make sure, like you said, the stability. So making sure they're high up, high tops. If you don't have any high top ones, like we were talking about earlier, maybe, especially if you have ankle issues, maybe wearing an ankle brace to give that support higher up. Um, you can use inserts, getting inserts, you can get your own inserts, personal inserts. The only thing with that, you want to make sure that you're breaking them in before you use them because you can actually make yourself a lot worse if you just go, cold turkey right into hiking with brand new inserts. So that's important is to make sure that, your body's used to the change. But and I did write down a couple specific boots that I did some research on, but three lightweight hiking shoes. It's called Ultra Lone Peak 8, and that one has a nice wide toe box to let that those feet breathe and still be for good stability. There's a Salomon X Ultra 4, and there's also a Merrell Moab 3. So those are just again, I'm not an expert in it as well, but I did do some research on it, and those were three that were, had good results. So those are three that you can use. But I think the biggest thing is making sure that you're supported, making sure you're comfortable, and making sure like that foot can breathe, the ankle can breathe, and you're not compressing it for prolonged periods because hiking does take some time. It's not a 10-minute walk. So next thing we have, which you've been talking about this as well. Why does my knee hurt more going downhill instead of uphill?
So, why does my knee hurt more going downhill than uphill? And um, when you're walking downhill or downstairs, it puts more stress on the front part of your whole lower extremity, especially the knee, around the kneecap area, around the tendons that attach the kneecap to the quadriceps muscle and the tendons that attach the kneecap to the shin bone, the tibia. And so you can get a lot of compression um, of the area under the kneecap when you're going downhill. One simple thing you can do on yourself, put your knee straight, just let it relax and move your kneecap back and forth. Moves real easy, right? Bend your knee to 90 degrees in a chair and try to move your kneecap. It doesn't move at all. It's stocked in there. So the more flexion of your knee, the more pressure on that kneecap, that front part of the kneecap joint, the undersurface, and you can get pain from that. You can get because when you're walking downhill, all the muscles in the front are what we call eccentrically loaded. So they're lengthening, but your muscles are contracting to slow it down so you don't fall down the hill. And so that puts a lot of stress on the tendons in the front of the knee as well. And so it probably is more stressful to the knee going downhill than uphill. And that's probably the reason why people have more pain going downhill than uphill. I will let you expand on that as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's similar to going downstairs as well, that eccentric control. And that kneecap as well. But I do think that, there's a lot of, but that's with going up as well, but a lot of hip strength, single leg hip strength and things like that. But I think a big thing that I've noticed, especially going downstairs and, down um, hills, slopes and things like that, is ankle mobility. I think that's something that's, especially for knee pain, is very, very often overlooked. That ankle mobility will correlate to where that knee positioning is. You want that knee to travel over your toe a little bit, especially when you're going down, which also, correlates with that eccentric quad. So I think you hit it right the nail on the head. I would check, some ankle mobility as well, but I think you covered it pretty well. The next one we have, are there low impact alternatives to hiking?
Say that one more time.
Are there low impact alternatives to hiking?
Are there low impact alternatives to hiking? Um, yeah, I think there are. I mean, you can just, there's a lot of people who just um, walk for exercise, on flat ground, or around, around a track. Um, in there, there are um, people walk on country, on maybe they go to a country club on a golf course, and that's a little bit less strenuous. The ground is more even, it's softer, and there's still hills there, and they can still go up and down hills, but it's not the uneven terrain. It's softer. And so I see a lot of people who like to walk or even run on golf courses or on soccer fields or football fields or whatever, things like that. But I don't know of any thing that's marketed as a alternative to hiking um, that is like, oh, here's this thing and it's an alternative to hiking and it's lower impact. I don't know of anything like that. I'm sure there is, but I mean, from my experience, I just know a lot of people who like to walk on, golf courses or a park. There's a lot of nice parks you can walk in. There's actually in Cleveland, there's a really nice park that used to be a golf course that's now been converted into a park. They're letting it go natural. All the old cart paths are nice and even. There's hills. You're not on uneven ground, and there's a ton of people walking there. So parks, golf courses, um, tracks, even just walking on the road. Although some people don't like walking on the road because it's a harder surface. So those would things that I would say. But I'm sure there's other people watching right now who have a million other possibilities. And please put those in the chat. Please respond and give us more questions and more suggestions to give to our patients who don't necessarily, they liked hiking, but now they want other alternatives that are kind of close, but not quite as strenuous.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I don't know if there's like a one thing that, is that one alternative, but in my experience, I think segmentation of the task, breaking it down by its parts, starting to work on walking on stable surfaces and then going to, even if it's just on a treadmill, walking on a stable surface with an elevation. And then you go to uneven surface, flat, uneven surface. Then you can go, uphill, uneven surface. So you kind of break it down, work on your core, work on single leg stuff. So breaking down the movements into their parts and perfecting those parts, I think can go a long way as well. Because we know the stronger you get those muscles, the less impact that will go on the knees. So if you do work on strengthening the knees, you in turn will have less impact on the joint. Next one. Are there minimally invasive or non-invasive ways to get me back hiking if I have really bad arthritis?
So if someone has really bad arthritis and they want to know if they can hike again or get back to hiking, the answer is yes. We do that all the time, and there are definitely ways to do that. A lot of them are what we have just talked about with regard to working on the entire body, working on the mechanics, the range of motion, the strengthening, the mobility, the proprioception, the balance. Those are huge, right? That's probably the most important part. But to your point, there may be other things that are preventing the person from doing that. So their knee is in too much pain, or they have actually, we see this all the time. Yes, they have arthritis, meaning the cartilage on the end of the bone is wearing down. We have two types of cartilage in our knee. We have the cartilage on the end of the bone, which looks like the white on the end of a chicken bone. We have the meniscus cartilage, which are the shock absorber cartilages. Those can wear down over time and it can even get to bone on bone. But really, the bigger issue is as the cartilage wears down, more and more force gets transmitted to the bone underneath, and the bone can start to break down faster, and the body can heal itself, and you can get stress or microfractures. And you can't see those on an X-ray; you can only see them on an MRI. So if somebody has those, and we're trying to do all those exercises and get them back into shape, and they have a stress fracture, usually that's going to actually make them worse. And so we got to treat the core or the root problem in the first place. So the answer is yes. We have ways of taking people's, own stem cells. So we take bone marrow from the patient's pelvis, which is a little area above the buttock, not the hip joint, not the spine, and we concentrate those cells. And in the bone marrow, there's stem cells, there's other cells that help the stem cells. And as we get older, we have less stem cells in our arms and our legs. And that's why our knees, for instance, in this case, start to break down faster than the body can heal itself. We also may gain a little bit of weight. We also, our muscles may get weaker, our bones may get a little softer, and all those things contribute. So we can take good stem cells and other cells that help the stem cells and inject them into the area where that stress microfracturing is and get that to heal. Because you can't do all these things if you have a soft spot in your bone. People who have those soft spots are 9 times more likely to go on to need knee replacement. So we would take care of that first. We would also inject some into the knee. We also use PRP, platelet-rich plasma, which is another biologic substance that comes from your blood. Basically has a lot of growth factors, so it acts kind of like fertilizer to help with healing. We use laser therapy, which we talked about a little bit earlier. Laser decreases inflammation, increases blood flow, because that's very helpful for healing. It also decreases pain, so you don't have to take all those anti-inflammatories and rip your stomach apart. And then it also stimulates the mitochondria, which is a little powerhouse of your cell. And if your mitochondria are working well, your cells are going to work better. They're going to heal better. They're going to function better. They're going to remodel better, all those things. So absolutely, when we have someone come in and they have really bad arthritis and they're like, oh, I'm never going to be able to hike again. I just want to be able to walk around my house without pain or sleep without pain. And I'm like, well, do you want to hike as well? And they're like, yeah, I would love to hike, but I'm never going to be able to do that again. Well, baloney. 8 to 9 times out of 10 at least, we're able to get him back doing that. I'm not bragging. That's just what the results are. And even Dr. Philippe Hernigo proved that in the late 1990s, early 2000s, did a study looking at people who had severe knee arthritis on both sides, did a knee replacement on one side, did stem cells on the other side. And 82% of those people who had the stem cells never needed a knee replacement for 10, 15, or 20 years. So there's plenty of science that backs it up. And we do even more than just a shot. We do the entire thing. So if you just do the shot and you don't take care of all those mechanical problems and those muscle problems and those alignment problems, those range of motion problems, you're gonna get it back again. And so we work on everything. We do a holistic program. And again, I'm not trying to brag, but that's what we do. So why would I not be excited about it? And the answer to your question is absolutely. We get lots and lots of people better to be able to hike again, even if they have mild, moderate, or even severe arthritis.
Yeah, and that's awesome. That is awesome. That was all the questions I had today. Do you have any questions for me?
Um, I don't think I do.
No,
How's that question? Do you garden at all?
I don't. My mom wanted me to start helping her with one. My mom wants to start one, so I
All right.
might be
Well,
helping her with one in the future. So
I think it would be great. How much room do you guys have? Now, Lucci's family owns some awesome pizza shops, Peppino's Pizza in Syracuse, New York. Do you have any land available like on the actual on the properties there where you could do a garden and grow some tomatoes?
we do have we do have some space. We do have
Yeah,
some
you
space.
can do a raised bed, but that would be kind of a really cool thing. And then you could have that special, tomato sauce from those tomatoes. But I'd be more than happy to help.
Yeah.
I know Carl, our director of operations. I know Adam. A lot of us garden. It's just a really good, just I guess, getting back to gardening itself, it's a very good it's good physically.
Yeah.
People who do it tend to live longer, just like people who play tennis tend to live longer. You get a reward for it because you get amazing food that you don't have to go to the store. And I don't spray mine with anything, so I can just eat it right out of the garden.
Right.
But the mental part of it is huge. And I know we've listened to books and read books on how important the mental part of things is and how having those days or times of your day where you are completely detached. And I think gardening really helps with that.
Yeah.
And if your mind is good, your body's going to feel better too. As a matter of fact, our mind controls a lot of our body. And so if your body is in great shape, but your mind's not, you're still not going to function well and you're still not going to be happy with how you're doing. So I think gardening is a great physical and mental thing. And it's a great social thing, like to do with your mom and your family and kids and all that stuff. So it's really a great thing. Can you get injured? Yeah, but you can get injured doing a lot of things. But it's the benefits far outweigh the risks.
I think that's important what you just said in terms of the mental aspect of things. Right now I use basketball for that, but I just had hamstring injury, little by little I feel like I'm inching towards the gardening. But no, I think that's very important, especially because when I was out with my hamstring, you don't get that time to do what you love and, escape from the rest of the world. And that's kind of what happens with me with basketball. I'm sure that's what happens with you with gardening. It kind of resets you. So I think that's very important, especially for people, that are in recovery, because it's tough on the mental just as much as it is on the physical. And I think that's one thing that I think in terms of therapy in general can improve on in terms of worrying about people's mental aspect, not just, their knee. And that's something that we do here as well. And I think that it goes a long way.
I totally agree. When someone has an injury or they have something wrong with them or they've had a surgery, we know ACL surgery is easily the recovery is probably 80% mental and 20% physical. And the 20% physical is very difficult, but the mental is also extremely hard. And then you have people who re-injure it again. It just does happen. And that's
Yeah.
so hard physically, but way harder mentally.
Yeah.
And you can't neglect that. And to have other, like you love basketball, right? But what if you lose basketball? It's always good to have other things that you can do as well that you love, whether it's music or, gardening or whatever. So having a little bit of a diversity there is helpful too,
Mhm.
because if you have all your eggs in one basket, sometimes, if that basket breaks, it's a problem and it's a lot harder to get through mentally. So totally agree.
100%.
Can't neglect the
Yeah.
mental. It's massive,
Yeah.
massive.
There's studies that the more positive you are throughout your recovery, the better outcome you get. So I think that it's worth
Yeah.
um addressing. So I
I mean,
mean,
man is what man thinks man is. I mean, you are woman or whatever, man, woman, you are what you think you are. And if you think it, you can get there. You can do it.
100%. 100%.
Cool.
So
So I think we ended on a
yeah.
good note there. I think that's
Yeah.
a note that doesn't get mentioned enough. So thank you.
No. Yeah. Doc, thank you so much for answering these questions, and thank you to all our fans out there on social media for submitting them. If you have a question and you would like Dr. P to answer, be sure to join our school group linked in the description below. As of the date of this recording, it is free to join. Be sure to follow us on social media at Victory in Motion 1, and be sure to follow Dr. P on social media at Dr. Mark Petropoli. That's Mark with a C. We will see you on Ask Dr. P next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Thanks, Doc.
Yeah. And thank you for all those people who submitted those gardening questions. As you know, I love gardening and I haven't done it in a while, but hashtag fun farmer Dr. P, hashtag fun farmer Dr. P. There are some gardening videos out there.
Let's get it trending.
We'll do more. We'll do some more. All right.
Yes.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.